a warm welcome to everyone. And we're so delighted to join you and to present and share our work with you. So I warmly welcome you to this session where we are going to be looking at how we are working with livestock and traditional ecological knowledge to regenerate landscapes and build resilient communities in Zimbabwe and Kenya. My name is Gertrude Pswarayi-Jabson, and I'll be your host. And to join me in this conversation, we have colleagues from Zimbabwe and Kenya who are part of a multi-year joint learning program that is principle-driven. And this program really is looking at creating a network of communities that are rerouting themselves in their landscapes and increasingly practicing plant grazing with their communities and working with livestock to regenerate depleted landscapes. So to begin this conversation, I think it's important for us to just set a quick context so that you audiences also understand where we are coming from and the importance of this joint learning program. So in Southern and Eastern Africa, landscapes are highly degraded. And this is contributing to a lot of suffering, not just for humans, but also for other forms of life. So the coming together of these program partners that I'm going to introduce to you is really aimed at deepening knowledge and understanding on how we can better work with livestock and draw from our wisdom, the traditional wisdom that we've always had, to regenerate depleted landscapes without spending a lot of time introducing the topic. I just want to invite all of us to keep the space that we are having to help us to hold it and keep it sacred. So we respect the views that each and everyone is going to be sharing, and also would love to hear from you. So do use the chat box to post your comments, your questions, and then we'll use these to further deepen our conversation. To start the conversation, we'll cross over to Chimanimani district in eastern Zimbabwe, where we have two smallholder farmers, Taurayi, Sithole, and Melody, who are practicing holistic plant grazing. So I warmly welcome Taurayi and Melody to share their experiences on the ground on how they have been working with livestock to heal depleted land. Over to you, Taurayi. It seems we have lost them. We can come back to Taurayi and Melody after. Maybe we can jump straight to hear from Dr. Muchineripi. Dr. Muchineripi is working with communities in Gertrude district. Dr. Muchineripi, they have started to practice plant grazing, and the process.
Okay, Gertrude, thank you very much for the introduction. Paul Muchineripi is my name. I work with the Chinyika Trust. Can someone communicate with the Chimanimani and ask them maybe to hold on and do their presentation after mine?
Okay.
Can they hear us? Okay, Gertrude, can I go ahead?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. I was saying, my name is Paul Muchineripi. I work with the Chinyika Community Development Trust. Chinyika is based in Gertrude district. Gertrude is in Masvingo, in the southern part of Zimbabwe. And of course, southern part of Zimbabwe is one of those very dry areas. And our focus is on land and livestock management. You cannot talk about livestock if you don't talk about the soil, the regeneration of the soil, putting more life to the soil. so that the soil is able to grow more grass and it is able to sustain herd of cattle. And also, when we talk about livestock, we also talk about food. We talk about food security. Livestock is one of those things that the communities require. They use it in many aspects of their life. Livestock is the mainstream of their livelihood. If a person has no livestock, he is a nobody, and hence livestock is key. Hence, the livestock and the soil and the grass are one. And how do we do it in Gutu? Gutu is about 200,000 people and is divided into 44 wards. And we work with all those 44 wards. But how do we get to all the 44 wards? And how do we get to all the 200,000 people of Gutu? We do it through other stakeholders. We work very closely with government extension officers who are dotted all over Gutu. There are more than 100 of them. And we have very good working relationship with them and with their leadership. And hence we do most of our work with them. We organize the communities through these extension officers. We also work with the traditional leaders, that is the chiefs, the councillor, the village heads, and sub-chiefs. These are the local traditional leaders who also are the custodian of the land. They are also the custodian of the traditional knowledge and so on. And hence we learn from them, they learn from us, and we work with them to achieve our objective of land regeneration. And when we talk about land regeneration, how do we do it? Using cattle. We have what we call moving crawls, moving bombers, putting cattle together overnight. And when they are doing that, they are leaving their urine, they are using their dung, they are using whatever to fertilize the soil. This is the cheapest way to fertilize soil, the cheapest way to put life into the soil. And when they are grazing, we graze them together and they move together and their hooves do loosen the soil. And when they loosen the soil, they also regenerate the soil. And how long have we been doing this? The Chinyika Community Development Trust has been in existence for the past 16 years. But of course, our focus then was more on the food aspect. And as I said earlier on, you cannot separate the cattle from food or livestock from food. These things are one. But of course, as time went on, we got to realize that the soil is no life. We need to put more life into the soil. And hence now we are concentrating on regenerating the soil using proper livestock management systems. And how do we do that? We do that using what we call controlled grazing. And the controlled grazing requires a lot of organization. We put together what we call grazing committees, which manage the controlled grazing part of it. We put together 3 to 4 villages, and they put a committee which manages those 3 or 4 villages. And the controlled grazing means cattle move from paddock 1 to paddock 2, paddock 3, paddock 4, up to maybe paddock 9 or paddock 10. And then paddock 1 is regenerating while they are moving on to paddock 2, paddock 3, and so on. And they just move them around to allow the grass to grow and regenerate and also recover. what were the benefits that we got from using this system? We discovered that, you know, the cattle have less ticks or have no ticks, which causes diseases. And it's cheaper to manage the livestock when you put them together. And because there's more grass, the cattle multiply, and really, which means when we have more cattle, we can sell those cattle and have more money. Indeed, I think the system that we are using is benefiting our communities, and the communities are more and more supporting it. The leadership is more and more supporting it. And then, what is my role as one of those coordinating? I'm also one of the traditional leaders, and hence I'm listened to by most of these traditional leaders, and hence implementing the program has not been a problem. However, for us to get to more communities, we had to use the government extension officers. They're already paid by the government. They're already there in the field. They're already working with the farmers. And all we needed was to give them the knowledge, backing them up so that they work with the communities and we get the results that we want. I think I would end here and I will be willing to get questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing your experiences from Gutu and how you are working closely with government to scale up the practice of holistic management. I saw that we now have the Chimani farmers back with us. Maybe we can try to cross over to Chimani where we have Taurayi and Melody who can also share their experiences on the ground. Taurayi, you have the floor. Hello, Solomon. I was wondering if perhaps it seems like we are struggling with connection from Chimani. Will it be possible for you to give a summary of the work that's happening in Chimani, and then we can have the farmers join the conversation when we have the question and answer session? Would that work?
Yeah, Gertrude, I think it can work if you hear me loud and clear. I think I can try that.
Perfect.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. So let me introduce myself.
We are almost connected here.
Sorry. Okay. So maybe Pswarayi and your team then, Taurayi, can you maybe have your last trial then? If you fail this time around, then I will come in as Gertrude suggested, then you join during the conversation. If you have more than one gadget connected there, please remove other gadgets, disconnect other gadgets and use only one gadget so that you do not have echoes. You can proceed. If it fails, then I come in. Thank you.
And maybe just to remind
my name is Melody Pswarayi from Southern Africa, Zimbabwe, Manicaland province, in Chimani district, Ward 3 Chagowa, and I live in Chinga village. I'm a livestock farmer who is into land regeneration with other farmers in our village.
Kuoneke mhanza dzevhu takabatsirwa neveSithole Trust kuti kuvhare masango pamwe tichishandisa mhuka dzedu uye kana kuti zvipfuyo.
After seeing some challenges of low erratic rainfall in our area, drying of rivers and streams, shortage of forage for our livestock, we get training from Sithole Trust to use livestock to resuscitate our land.
Mushure mukuona kudzidziswa kubva kuSithole Trust, senharaunda takaunganidza mombe dzedu pamwe chete tikadzifudza kwegore rese tichishandisa kurongedzwa kwemafuro.
Soon after getting training from Sithole Trust on regenerating our land using livestock, we came together as a community We brought our livestock together, started collective herding and planned grazing for the whole year.
Chirongwa chiri kubatsira pakuzorodze bundo redu kana kuti sora redu kuti rizorore uye kuti sora redu rimere pakamere patsva uye kuite kuti sora redu risaramba richipurwa kusvike pakuti harichazomeri futi zvakare.
The process enabled our rangelands to regenerate through having resting periods, avoidance of overresting and overgrazing. The process had promoted natural cultivation of barelands, reducing runoff, facilitating infiltration of water, thereby recharging water table. And in this process, we are really regenerating our land and improving our ecosystem to health.
Tiri kushandisa matanga anofamba ari kushandiswa kupodza minda uye ndove neweti yezvipfuyo zvedu zviri kutibatsira kupodza ivhu.
We are also improving our soil fertility through livestock. We are using movable cross, the bombers, which we use to put our animals together for night crawling. So during this process, the animals leave the dung and the urine in the soil, thereby improving the soil fertility, which will help us on our crop production.
Kubudikidza nechirongwa ichi varimi vari kuona pekutengeserawo zvipfuyo zvavo zvakanaka uye kudiwa kwemombe kuri kuderera uye mafuro matsva ari kubuda uye kuderedza tsaona dzemombe dzinosangana kana murodhi.
Because of this journey we have traveled on land regeneration, we have witnessed quite a number of benefits to our community. Our community has benefited through having formal markets because we are now organized. Now we have some formal markets. There is also a reduction of livestock theft. There is also an increase in emergence of new species of forages. There is also improvement livestock management through working together. We can also witness that because of land regeneration through using animals, some rivers which had dried some years ago, 10 years ago, are now having water again flowing in them because of the project.
Nerekufurwa kwesora rinenge rakazorora saka madzishe edu ari kubatsira vanhu vemunharaunda vese kuti vapinde muchirongwa pamwe chete vashandire pamwe nekudzidza pamwe chete uye vari kushandira uye mombe dzedu kuti dzifurire pamwe chete uye mombe dzedu kuti vari muchirongwa nezvipfuyo zvavo zvipindewo muchirongwa imomo.
In the implementation of this process of this project, we are having some challenges of cattle poaching grasses where we have spared the paddocks for resting. So this is the challenge we are facing. But currently, our traditional leaders are working on the bylaws that are helping to unite the communities together so that the non-participating members or villages can also join the project. Again, we have a problem of people who are not adopting the project. So we are also doing some door-to-door campaigns, highlighting the importance of the project to other community members so that they can also join and we work together as a community.
Projects kurege kuva nemombe dzinozoya dzichidya sora pasina sora rakazorora uye tinotarisira kuti mombe zhinji dzive muproject kudzidza pamwe nekushandira pamwe kwenharaunda.
Looking forward, our vision is to see the whole community working together, putting their animals together in large numbers so that the positive impact of land regeneration using livestock would be witnessed and would go far. We also aim to see the whole community coming together, learning together, and implementing this project together. Thank you. and over.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm just wondering, because the presentation was done with your video off, our audience would also want to see the farmers and connect with Melody, who is in the field. I know that you had switched off the video because of the challenges we are having with connection, but perhaps if you can quickly switch on the video, and the audience can also get to meet Melody from the field. Great. As you are switching on the video, I just want to acknowledge the work that's happening on the ground. So for our audience, much of the work that has been happening in Chimani is around implementing the holistic land and livestock management. And this joint program really marries two principles or two ideas, holistic manage and the traditional ecological knowledge. So before we hear from Simon, who is based in Tharaka, Kenya, and has been doing some deep work with communities to reroute them and reconnect them to their land, to their culture and their customary governance system, perhaps I can quickly ask Elias to just give the audience just a summary of what holistic management is about, so that there is that broader understanding of what we mean when we say holistic management. I think this will help the audience to get the context of how we are working with livestock and now how we are marrying this concept with deepening of practices, rerouting ourselves to the land and connecting with the ecological governance system. So maybe you can briefly tell the audience what holistic land and livestock management is about before we cross over to Simon in Tharaka. Over to you, Elias.
My name is Elias Ncube from Africa Center for Risk Management. And holistic management is a framework for making sound decisions socially, economically, and environmentally. So that's what holistic management is. So when we talk of holistic land and livestock management, we have for communities who are agro-pastoralists, even including pastoralists, we decided that our emphasis would be on land and livestock, because that's the tool that we are going to use. And this is why you hear us talking about holistic land and livestock management. So for communities ready to manage holistically, they need to have a common understanding of what they are. So they create a statement which describes how they want their life to be like, the behaviors that are going to actually support that type of life, and the type of landscape that will support them forever. So in brief, that's holistic management. Then of course it has planning procedures like holistic planned grazing, but holistic management is more about decision making. And when you have done that statement, now you have to make sure that you are moving towards that statement. So we have what we call the context checks. Say if you have a problem, you say, are we addressing the root cause of the problem? And then if you are taking any decision, you ask yourself, what is this? Is this action we are planning? What will it do to our relationship, which is the social part? Or you will say, is this action going to improve our livelihoods, which is the economic part? Is this action going to enhance our natural, our land, water, or other natural resources? That's the environmental part of it. So we are looking at the three components: social, economic, and environmental. So as we move, we must have a common statement that binds us together. And that common statement is what we call the holistic context. So in brief, that's
we
what
will ask you to talk more about the plant grazing, which farmers like Melody and Taurayi and Mani are using. Perhaps we cross over to Tharaka in Kenya to hear how Simon is working with his community. Simon is with the Society for Alternative Learning and Transformation, SALT, which is based in Kenya. Simon, let's hear how you've been working with community to deepen this relationship with land and culture.
Yeah, thank you, Gertrude, for the opportunity. My name is Simon Mitambo, as Gertrude has said, and I'm the community leader for Society for Alternative Learning and Transformation based in Tharaka in Kenya, which is in the eastern part of the country. And I've been working with the community in Tharaka since 2013. And this is a community that is generally an agro-pastoralist, meaning that they keep livestock and also grow crops that, and these are in dry land crops. And initially, when we started, we were more concerned about the loss of our culture and our traditions, because this particular community is very rich in their culture, and they are very much inclined to their cultural practices. So we started by organizing community dialogues where we brought the elders together. There were issues like around the loss of our traditional seeds, loss of our food, loss of our particular trait of the animals. And for some time we had done community dialogues, trying to come together, led by the elders, and we were looking at many diverse issues that touch on our culture and nature. And so in 2018, we did a mapping, an ecological mapping, which helps us to understand how our land was organized in the past, and also to be able to compare with how it is in the present, so that when elders are giving us the story of the land, also the young people can understand that the way we see it was different in quite a number of years ago. And when we did the community maps and also calendars, we also discovered that the land was undergoing a lot of degradation. And some of the factors that were linking this, our loss of culture was key. And part of this also came as a whole issue about how we graze our animals and how we take care of our animals. And so the part of the villages that keep animals, because not everyone now is also keeping, we started like a pilot process with them. And so we started very specific dialogues, what we usually call zooming in, so that when we discover the whole issues that face the community, then we narrow in to a specific issue that we want to understand more. In this particular case, was very much around grazing, because even when we were doing the maps and calendars, we could see how people were grazing in the river bends, how people were grazing in the hills, in the mountains, and we could all see that. And when we sat down, that is when we started to discuss how can we revive our ways of grazing, which the elders said that during that time, it was also very planned, because there were certain customary laws that governed how we graze and how we keep animals, and how all these things also relate with the land and also relate with the community structure, the clan governance, and all that. And the elders, of course, are cited that one of the problems that was causing all this poor grazing was because our traditional knowledge and our customary law and governance was not being followed. So part of this has also been to have dialogues with the communities that have livestock around how they can bring back, because some of the things that were happening is that the way people used to graze their land, the animals they used also to have a very planned landscape where a particular point where you take your animals to drink water is a specific a point where the whole village also comes in, so that you don't just your livestock would not just approach the drinking point from any other particular area. So this is now they began now to bring back those also watering points, and the part of the challenge was also that some people had grabbed them. Fortunately, when some demarcation of the land was also happening, some people and also grabbed them and took them to be part of their land. And so part of our journey has also been to talk with the government officials and also to bring the community together to be able to understand where these particular drinking points were located and to begin to revive them. And the other thing that had also been lost is where people would bring animals together, bunch them, we call them maradia, and they could bring the animals together and also develop the kind of traditional paddocks. Because how they normally do it is that we develop a grazing calendar from the time of the rain to the time of the lesser rain and that kind of thing. And we could say that during this particular time, this is where the animals can graze. This other particular time, this is when you can bring back the animals, and that kind of thing. And how the also health of the animals was also determined by how the different relationship within the governance of the community also come into interplay. And some of these things were also began to be brought in more into conscious. And you will find that the way we graze our animals and the way we keep our animals is very much intricately related to almost other aspects of that the community is engaged in. And at the moment, what also we have been doing, we found it also necessary because some of these customary laws, not everyone who understands them. And so what we have done also, like Zimbabwe, we have also brought the villagers together to form the committees also with the provincial administration, so that they can also write down some of the customary laws and also blend in also with some laws that they feel can work. But at the moment, we are in the process of writing down purely the customary law for the recognition of the county government, and also so that they can be enforced also by the county government. So in brief, that is the journey we have walked and we are walking, and I can answer some more questions.
Wonderful. And just to remind our audience and viewers that we really want to engage with you. So please do post questions on the chat box, and my colleagues will begin to even respond to some of those questions. And at the end of the session, we'll begin to harvest some of the questions that are coming in the chat box, and we'll deepen the conversation that we are having here. And I like, Simon, what you talk about. You talk about it being a journey. And I think this is what this multi-year joint learning program is. It's a partnership comprising of 10 organizations that are really working with communities to deepen their understanding on how to manage livestock in a way that heals the land and sustains it to health, but also tapping into the wisdom of our elders and the African cosmology and understanding of how things work, particularly when we're looking at managing livestock. And since you talk about a journey, perhaps let's go back to Chimani Mani. We hear briefly from Solomon to talk about their journey as they have been working and tying all these aspects to do with the proper management of livestock and linking it to the climate crisis that we are facing. Solomon, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. Thank you so much, viewers and also our listeners. I'm from Chimanimani district in Zimbabwe. That is the eastern part of the district, which is the islands. So I'm going to share just in brief our journey in the land regeneration program under the project we called the Holistic Land and Livestock Management in Chimanimani district. So for a start, I would share that by 2012, Chimanimani district had identified some of the challenges that the farmers have already alluded to, that include some baylands that they've seen, drying of streams and rivers. So from that time, it was proposed to have a project that can address some of these issues. And one of the projects that was identified was the Holistic Land and Livestock Management, where we are using the livestock to address the livestock to heal the land in the district of Chimanimani. And we started with only 5 wards out of 23 wards under Chimanimani Road District Council. So we started with 5 out of 23 wards. So as we journeyed in the pilot projects, we also discovered that we had some challenges that include poor participation of some of the farmers or some of the communities or villages in the program. And we went on further as a district to try and do an action research to find out more on the issues surrounding us as a district of Chimanimani. And from the action research that we did in 2015 and 2016, from that action research, it was also discovered that some of the issues, especially land and environmental degradation issues happening in the district, was due to a poor governance systems, that is institutional governance at the district level, at community level, even at traditional leadership level. And what happened out of this? That's when the district stakeholders said, what can we do as a district so that we have a policy, a working policy in place to support land regeneration in the district, to support sustainable environmental management. That is when we as Tsuro, that is towards sustainable use of resources organization, Tsuro Trust, we then facilitated the formulation of a policy in the district, working with the stakeholders and community and traditional leaders. And this policy was named the Chimanimani District Watershed and Climate Change Management Policy. And from this policy, we were very much excited because the traditional leaders and the district stakeholders, as well as the farmers, they pointed out holistic land and livestock management as one key action that was supposed to be taken on board if we are to address land degradation in our district and also to improve the quality of our environment. So this policy was adopted in 2017 by Chimanimani Rural District Council, and we then had a strategy to put some actions in place. And from that strategy, it was then recommended as a district that let us now move holistic land and livestock management to a higher level, and let us move it from the current 5 wards that were there in 2017 to expand into the district to 16 wards. That is adding 11 more wards in the district, from 5 adding 11 to 16 wards. So currently, as we are speaking, we have over 7,000 cattle that are being headed together in community heads using time-controlled grazing in Chimanimani district in a total of 16 wards. And as a Tsuro Trust, as an organization, we have also said it is not enough for us to practice without sharing what we are doing. So we are working very closely with our local radio stations, the Diamond FM in Manicaland, as well as the national radio stations and the national television, to share what we are doing in Chimanimani so as to advocate for support and to also to support the action that is currently happening in Chimanimani district. And we have also learned as a district in Chimanimani that we cannot work alone, because this land regeneration program is actually an intensive program which needs a lot of support, needs a lot of resources, and needs a lot of commitment. So we are also happy that we then are a member of a very strong collaboration, which is the current joint learning program, which is being coordinated by Pelam Zimbabwe. We are the members of that project, and we are even doing more in terms of advocacy and lobbying at the district level to ensure the concept can spread wider in the district and even beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Solomon, for sharing that. And perhaps before we hear more from Elias, I know Elias has been working with the Africa Center for Holistic Management for so many years, and he is very technical when it comes to explaining plant grazing, which falls under holistic management, which is the framework for making decisions. But since this program really is about bringing that aspect of plant grazing and this aspect about traditional ecological knowledge, I'll begin by beginning to infuse the questions that are coming from our audience. Elias, there's a question in the chat box from Elizabeth. She's asking about communities have they observed any changes in terms of health of the land, and also the benefits that are coming from plant grazing, and if so, what are those benefits? Perhaps you can talk more about the biomonitoring that you have been working with different communities in Zimbabwe and outside Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Gertrude. The journey was not a simple one, because when we started, we were working with the communities and we were thinking holistic land management. And then we realized that people were not very much interested in the land. They were interested more in their livestock. So that's why we ended up marrying the two to say holistic land and livestock management. Then it worked for us. So then with the communities, it's not just simply a matter of just going there to say, this is holistic management, let's do A, B, C, D. We need to understand how they are functioning. So our entry point has been the mobilization process, because it's a very important one. In that we have, before even planning the grazing, we have what we call a land and social planning. To say, we need to understand how the communities is currently planning the land. What is the grazing? What is the effect on soil? What is the effect on plants, water, animals, including domestic and wild? And once we have that understanding, then now the community can create a map of their own community. And this involves a lot of working. If you plan in the office, the chances of being wrong are very high. But if you go on the land, observe what is there, then come and sit down. Then come up with a map to say, okay, what do we do? Then that's when holistic plant grazing comes in. And it looks at many variables. It looks on the soil, it looks on the plants, it looks on the water, it looks at the predators and the plant recovery, even bush encroachment. So all those things need to be put in a plan. Say, what do we do when there's bare land? What do we do when there's more land? What do we do when there's bush encroachment? So all that has to be taken into account. And some of the croplands have been exhausted. The soil is no longer fertile. So what do we do with those ones? Do we leave them just like that? And so we have worked with the communities. And on the cropland, we started experimenting with the livestock staying maybe a few days on the land, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And we realized that if you have a movable, a pen or crawl, you shift it every 7 days, you create a very fertile land. And the communities have had high harvest, even doubling the yield in their croplands. Then on the rangelands, when communities were able to bring their cattle together and headed in one area, then it allowed the plants to regrow. And the communities have observed that plants begin to recover. Of course, the plants don't just shoot up in 1 year. First, you will have a few annual grasses growing, then the annual grasses increase. Then later on, you see a few dotted perennial grasses growing, then they increase, and eventually you have full cover of the land. Then the water also begins to stay longer in the rivers. Instead of just drain immediately, it may take a month or 3 months before it dries up, and eventually the rivers flow. So that's what the communities have experienced. But the planning has to be done, and it involves the community leaders, the headers need to be trained, and even have the extension staff supporting the community. So that's about holistic planned grazing. Then, of course, with every program we do, there are always challenges. One of the challenges we discovered is that the traditional leaders in most situations were not as strong as they used to be in the past. Because in the past, they would simply say, all the animals go this way, and they will all move that side. But now you find that with modernization, when people have their own households and their own land, a piece of land, then they will say, no, I'm not going there. So that's why the mobilization process is important. So that area is one challenge where if the leaders are together, program moves fast. The other challenge is it takes time to revive a community spirit because communities have become individualized. It's no longer that in a community spirit. Each one is looking after himself and no one is looking after the soil, the grass, the plants, they only use them. So it takes a bit of time to revive that community spirit for it to be deep-rooted. Then there are also fears that if we group of animals, there will be diseases. And this is where we need to have the veterinary department assuring communities of what can be done in case disease occur. Also, it takes time to shift paradigms. People have their own beliefs, and if you bring new knowledge, some question it, some just look aloof there. They are just saying, okay, that's good, but not taking real action. So it's important that it takes a bit of time. For instance, I will give an example. Many people do not believe that livestock can actually restore land. They actually believe that livestock actually destroy the land. In part, they are partially correct. If the animals are let loose randomly, the land can be destroyed by livestock. But if you manage them properly, the land recovers. So they need to be in. But sometimes those people who don't believe that this works will not be on the sideline until they begin to see the results. So those are some of the things. And when it comes to opportunities, there are plenty of them. Once the land is recovering, more forage grows and animals become healthier, and the communities have experienced that, and they become happier. And actually they become excited about what they've done themselves. The other one is opportunities that the land is there. In many communities, the land is there. So where to practice the technology is there. And the livestock also is there. And also we have developed the community curriculum, which we have shared in Zambia, Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, Kenya, and other countries in Africa, including even West Africa. And also the other advantage we have, like what my colleagues have said, that with this network of PELAM, we're able to come together, work as one team, and share ideas. So once the land recovers, we have also noted, especially at the Timbangome learning site near Victoria Falls, that the habitat for wildlife improves. The wildlife has food, there's water, there's shelter, which is very important. So it's really a big benefit, but it's a long journey. It's not just an easy thing to say, holistic management or holistic land and life for management, tomorrow is changing. It needs a bit of commitment, a lot of mobilization and discussion with the communities. So communities have definitely realized some then one area which also was noted by other people, once the land recovers, the next community is not managing livestock, you find that the neighbors' cattle begin to poach. And this is where leadership is important to prevent that. So I like the idea of Chimanimani, where they are doing it at a district level, where they can create a policy that will help them to prevent that, because that is the one challenge which they can not.
Elias, I'm going to hold you there just because I want to begin to infuse the comments that are coming from our viewers and audience so that really this becomes a conversation. Okay. I just want to quickly go to Paul. Paul, there is a question in the chat box, which is really from Lisa, and she wants to know what happened before you started using plant grazing. So maybe if you can quickly respond to that question, and then we can begin to use some of the questions to deepen the conversation.
Yes, sure, Gertrude, I will respond to that. Before we started the program, land was badly degraded, and there was less and less grass for the animals. And the animals were dying of diseases, they were underfed, and there were lots of problems. Land was not enough, and so on. Those were the problems, which then prompted the people to say, what can we do to improve this situation? And when Pelham and other stakeholders came in with this knowledge, and especially Elias, we sent our farmers to Nimbamombe to learn about land and livestock management. And when they came back, they were so inspired and so enthusiastic to implement the program. That was the beginning. And then the program has now been growing to cover many villages because they've seen the benefits. As it is now, those who have implemented the holistic land management, they've seen the benefits. Grass has grown, has recovered, land is regenerated, and as Elias said, rivers are starting to flow, and so there is life now in the land. You can visibly see the change, and the land can now hold more cattle than before because there's more grass. The land is a bit more fertile, and when it comes to growing of crops, using the moving crows and having this free fertilization of land has had lots of benefits. Farmers can now get better yield from their crops and so on. And I think those are the two, what happened before and what is the situation now.
Great, wonderful. Simon, I'll just come straight to you. Why reroute? Why should we reroute communities to their culture and the land if everyone has got livestock? Because I think one of the important point is that it's difficult to bring multiple stakeholders together to collectively herd livestock in one herd. So why is it really important to reroute communities in their land and their culture?
Yeah. Okay, from my perspective is that we are working with African communities, and part of challenges we find with our communities is that they have not been given space to exercise what they know. Sometimes the organizations that come to these communities come with ideas that they want communities to implement, and we don't value what they know. We bring into them what they know. So part of this process has been to tell the communities they know how to graze the animals in their land, how to take care of their land. They know how to protect their land, and we bring in the elders to lead the space because they have knowledge that has not been valued for so long because they have not been in any formal education, and sometimes people think that these elders do not know something. So why it is very critical is that we want this approach to create a space for the indigenous and local knowledge so that the communities take control of their lives. By creating this space, we are, for example, seeing that the approach to dealing with the issues that affect communities is holistic, like we are saying. It doesn't only touch on one area or one aspect. It touches on quite a number of integrated things. But the beauty of it also is that the communities feel that the whole process is in their hands and it's in their control. I think that is why it is very, very critical for me to bring them to work with what they know and what they understand, and to innovate from what they already know. So we, as people who are facilitating the process, we become we accompany. We talk of accompany. We really don't bring in sometimes so much, but we can only challenge them when they weaver, but we really want them to feel that they know and they can lead the process.
Elias, why holistic management? Because this is one of the critical components that we are bringing to this joint learning program. We talked about deepening our rerouting in culture. So why holistic management, and why are we bringing these two together, in your view?
If you look at holistic management, especially when it comes to issues of herding and all that, people have been using this for ages. And actually, I was talking to some elders, and I was asking one man to say, how have you been running? And one man said to me, you know, my father told me, if you want to keep livestock, don't do it as a part-time job. You should be with your animals throughout the year, not in the dry season only, but in the growing season only, but throughout the year. So it's important. And why we are using livestock? Because there are no tools to really regenerate the land at the moment, at least what we know. We need the hoof of the animals to break the crust so that water soaks in. We need the dung of the animals to fertilize the soil and the urine. And once they have done that, we need the animals to move off to another side so that the plants can regrow. And we cannot ask people to do that. It's only the livestock that can do it on a larger scale. Then also we need to monitor. You say, okay, if we are using livestock, are they actually changing the situation? And what we call biological monitoring, where we go back to those sites. Right at the beginning, we take fixed point photos. We check this condition of the soil, the plants that are there, and then every year we monitor so that we check, is the landscape really changing? Annual grasses, perennial grasses, anything. Then now we can say, yes, we have made the change. Otherwise, we can simply make a claim which is not really from us, simply rain only. So the livestock is an important tool because it can do it. And you do it just by herding, which is not very difficult for most communities. The only challenge is during the dry season, where people are now used to just pushing their animal because we've forgotten our tradition of keeping the animals together year round.
We are exactly on the hour, and I'm wondering how much time we still have to have this conversation. Maybe someone can help me. I'm using my phone, so as part of hosting and holding this process, do we still have time? Maybe that would help so that we are able to.
Gertrude, you have till 10:30.
Oh, wonderful. So we still have 30 more minutes. Wonderful. So just to bring in voices from the farmers and to begin to ask the question that also the audience are asking, what benefits are you seeing from herding your livestock in a planned manner and bringing them into one collective herd? Maybe we can hear from Taurayi and Melody. You unmute yourself and let us know the benefits that you are seeing as farmers on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Gertrude. Zvakanaka zvatiri kuona so far kuno kuti mani pane zvatakaita tichiita funzira mombe dziri pamwe chete. Tiri kuona kuti marwizi akutanga kuflowa, mvura yakutanga kuoneka. The benefits we've witnessed so far in Chimani is that so far we have seen some rivers which has dried some years ago starting to flow, water starting to flow again in those rivers and streams. Nedzimwe nzvimbo dzanga dzisina sora patinofodzera mombe mumasango, tinoona kuti sora remombe nezvifuyo zvedu zvimwe rava kutosimuka, rava kukura zvakare. We are also witnessing new grassy species emerging in our rangelands where we are doing the collective herding and plant grazing. Okay, chimwe chataona ndechekuti manga mune makoronga akawanda akakodzerwa nekukura kwaamwe akugadzirika zvakanaka. Takutoona mvura yakutanga kuerera mumakorongo umomo zvakureva kuti zvakutibatsira pazvipfuyo zvedu nenharaunda yedu. The program has also gone a long way in resuscitating some baylands. Ground cover has improved in the rangelands, and there's also a reduction in erosion, surface water runoff because of the ground cover.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm also trying to harvest questions from the chat box, and maybe I can go back to Paul. Paul, there's a question in the chat box from Elizabeth. She asks the type of land ownership in Zimbabwe and how this affects plant grazing or communities bringing their livestock together, because I think this is one of the major challenges. How do multiple stakeholders that are owning livestock, bringing livestock together and view a larger landscape? How is land ownership, like you're a traditional leader, so from your perspective, how is land ownership in Zimbabwe?
Sure. Yes, land is owned communally. It's owned by all of us, and of course the leadership do regulate the use of the land. We all have got the right to be on that land. We all have got the right to graze our cattle on the land and so on. But then when the leaders now regulate is, they say this shall be done, this shall not be done, and so on. And when I was talking about the grazing committees would now come up with the grazing bylaws, which would then be agreed by the communities and the traditional leaders. And everyone now is bound by those bylaws. And if anybody doesn't do according to those bylaws, that's the role of the traditional leaders now to ensure that those people come into line and the people are reprimanded, and that they have got to really toe the line. So really, land belongs to all of us, and we must all look after that land. But the structures of the traditional leaders ensure that the land is used properly for the benefit of the communities and also for future, because we've got children who would also want to use that land. And this land regeneration program is a very good program because it would ensure that the land is well cared for, the land is well looked after, the land is allowed to recover from the past mistakes that we have done, and so on. I don't know if I have answered the question.
I think you beautifully described it. And this is a question that comes from many people, not just those on the call, but also when we have conversations and talk about the joint planning program, the question about land ownership. And I think coming from our perspective as a joint learning program and really talking about rerouting in the land, in the practices, in the culture, we can't really talk about land ownership. And what you described there, Paul, is so beautiful because you're really talking about being custodians of the land. And this is what the rerouting is all about, becoming custodians of the land so that you begin to take care of it in a way that you know it's for now and for generations to come. And it's not just for humans, but also for other forms of life. And one of the questions in the chat box is asking, what's the long-term vision of this joint learning program? Anyone who wants to respond, what's the long-term vision of the program?
Gertrude,
yes,
you can also add
yes.
really the long-term vision as we see it. And as I said earlier on, Gutu has got more than 200,000 people, 33,000 families. The land does not grow. It's only how we look after the land and improving the quality of that land that would make us, survive. And hence, we cannot do without this program. Our vision is to make sure that the land in Gutu is completely recovered and it is able to look after more people, more cattle, and it improves the livelihood of the people. That's our long-term vision. Improve that quality of the land so that it is able to look after more people and more productive.
Yes, Elias, I see you want to come into.
Yeah, I want to add. I want to add something on that one. About 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, no one received food handouts in my community. They had enough for themselves. But currently, even in a year where there's good rainfall, communities receive food handouts. And yet we have the land. So for me, the long term is if we can restore the land, people can be self-sufficient, they will regain their dignity instead of just being beggars continually. And also, they will leave a legacy for the community. Because if the land deteriorates, we'll end up with deserts. And who wants to live in a desert? No one. But if the current generations restore the land, then they are actually bringing an assured future for the future generations.
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, I can summarize and say the long-term vision of this joint learning program is that communities are self-sufficient, they have healthy lands, they are prosperous. And when we talk about communities, we are encompassing all forms of life, because that's what makes a community. It's not just about humans. We are also thinking about the wildlife, we are thinking about the forests, we are thinking about the rivers, because that's what forms the entire ecosystem. Going back to Solomon, if he's still on the line. Solomon, you mentioned the work that you are doing with government, particularly to influence policies. Do you have some experiences that you'd want to share with the audience, particularly around how this joint learning program will help to influence policies at national level?
Okay, thank you so much, Gertrude. Yes, in the Mimicking district, as we are working with stakeholders, looking at the joint learning program, it is giving us great opportunities for us to have interactions with the district stakeholders, as well as some provincial stakeholders. Like, for example, when we have our programs at community level, through the support of the joint learning programs, we are able to invite stakeholders at the district level, at the national level, to also witness the activities that we are doing in the district. And of late, I think recently, some 2 months ago, we were also supported by the joint learning program to ensure we can share the lessons of what we are doing to the whole nation. And that's where we got an opportunity to even invite our local broadcaster, which is the Zimbabwe television, to also come to Chimanimani to document what we are doing, and this was broadcasted nationally. So I think this would add on to our long-term vision of sharing the concept in Zimbabwe. And we are also working in very close collaboration with the Climate Change Office, which is also supporting the work. All this is made possible through the collaboration that we have with the joint learning program. Thank you.
And when we do talk about the regeneration of landscapes and working with livestock, we can't help but just to also talk about the deep connections with other aspects and how this program begins to even address and respond to questions that are raised, particularly around climate change, youth participation, women involvement. So maybe I can come back to you, Paul, as a traditional leader working with communities. How are women being involved in this process? And how are youth also involved in the planned grazing? Because traditionally, livestock is owned by men. And if you can talk more about the involvement of youth and men, and then we can also hear from farmers their experiences on the ground. So over to you, Paul.
Sure, thank you, Gertrude. Yes, you'd find the more active part of our community are women, and the youth. Cattle belong to the young people because they look after them. The young guys are the people who go and head the cattle. Fine, in the controlled grazing and the planned grazing, we have a few people coming to look after the cattle, and it is the young people who get involved. And as I said earlier on, their involvement in the management of the rangeland also ensure that they value the land. They also value the cattle. In terms of the women, in terms of making sure there is food on the table, we grow good crops. It is the women who take active part. I know in the past, people would say the women have no role and so on, but that is the past. Now, women play a very prominent role in the livelihood of the family, We now have village heads who are women. We also now have chiefs who are women. So there is now no discrimination in terms of women and in terms of men. We are now we treat them as equal. And then coming back to the youth are the future. And when we send people for training, preference is given to the youth because these are the future leaders. And these are the people who take on the stick to run with it, to ensure that the continuous improvement of land is carried out. And it is for their own benefit as youth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Paul. It's one thing hearing from you, Paul, sitting in your beautiful office there. Let me ask the farmers, they are here. And we have Melody, who is representing women. And I see Taurayi is young, so you can bring the voices of youth. In your perspective or in your view, do you feel that as a woman, Melody, your dignity and your dignity as a woman is being restored by participating in this joint learning program? Muzvare Melody, ndiri kuti kana muri muchirongwa ichi munonzwa here kuti zvoni semudzimai ari kushanda nevarume mune chirongwa chinonzi mombe dzinochengetwa nevarume, misamai kana makushanda nemombe, munozvinzwa here kuti zvoni madzorerwa paumai hwenyu? So I've just been translating straight into Shona so that Melody can also respond. Over to you, Melody. You can unmute Pswarayi so that Melody can respond.
And no, I want
Melody, do you mind just repeating what you said? We lost you because of the connection. Do you want to try to come again? It seems they are frozen on the screen, but nonetheless, let me come to Simon. Simon, let's come back to you. You have been working with communities and really bringing this aspect and deepening this aspect of connecting with our culture. Maybe before I go to you, Simon, let's maybe try to hear from Melody again, the combined Melody. Do you want to come in?
from their project, women they are empowered because as I'm sitting here, I'm in the project. So I feel proud that I also participating and being empowered. And for us, we need to work. So the project is giving us a responsibility to do in our community so that we outfit. And also the women. Also, in our leaders are made to also get some out. So we are also being empowered because we put in the collective here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We struggled to hear because of the connection, but we could pick that Melody was saying that as a woman, she feels that she is empowered when she participates in this process. I hope I managed to decipher in between the breaking connection, but that's what we were hearing. Coming back to you, Simon, back in Tharaka, as you're working with communities and really reviving tradition and documenting customary laws. Do you want to tell us more about that process, really about what you do when you're saying you really want to document these customary laws, which is the law that people get from the land, and bring this into the management of livestock? And perhaps tell us why it's important.
Yeah, thank you, Gertrude. It's very important because as we continue to live in our communities, we are no longer homogeneous like we used to be. Other people from other parts also come in either through other ways. And you know, traditionally is that when we were born, you are born into that customary law, and as we grow, you are inducted and also initiated, and you understand all what it entails. But as more people come in and that kind of thing, not everyone who understands. So you find that the way such a community is organized in terms of how they take care of their sacred site, they don't go to graze in the rivers, they use the specific watering point. Not everybody will understand that. And also in our Kenyan law, they say that they recognize the customary law, but where the two laws, the customary and the mainstream law, contradict, they say the written is upheld. So if wherever they come into conflict, we go with what is written. And what is written is seen to have more power. So this is our inspiration for documenting our customary law, so that when it is written, everybody can read it and can understand it. So when you come to that land, you become aware about how the community structure is organized. The law talks around so many things. It integrates all the aspects and variables that Zube was talking about our soil, about our land, about our water, plants, animals, and all that. So they integrate all that. So, and we also know that when it is written and it becomes a law, even the local government has a responsibility to enforce it, because we also see that when it is also recognized and upheld, the local government also can enforce it just like other laws. So this is why it is very critical to do that. We know that the elders and those who have been initiated and also grown up in the cultural traditions, which are also very rich, they will understand that, but not everyone. So that is the essence why we say that it is very critical that they are documented. Again, when we document also, it's also our gift also to the future generation, because most of our children who also grow, they may also have not much time also to live up to the community and to do that, but they can also read this also from what has been written by the first generation.
Mm-hmm. And maybe just to pick from a question that was in the chat box, and I think Elizabeth kept asking, are you documenting this work? What kind of documentation are you doing? Are you looking at nutritional value? Are you looking at the soil? What's really happening? I think my question now to you as a member of the joint learning program, perhaps I can start with you, Simon. How do you document? Because for others, documentation is about having a journal that's peer reviewed. So coming back to this joint learning program, what kind of documentation do you think is important for this kind of work to be taken forward?
Yeah, we do different documentation, but in this particular one about documentation of our customary law, mainly we are saying that we are inspired by the ancestral wisdom. So what we are documenting is how our elders say, when we did this, this, and this, and when we bring back this aspect and this one, we see that the land will be better again. So in this particular one, it's more of inspired by ancestral wisdom. So we document it as it was, and as elders and the community members see it did. But of course, we have other levels of documentation that also looks at other aspects, like trying to see the numbers and the value, the principles, and all that. So in this particular case, we are also talking about different documentation. But in this particular customary law documentation is actually what is inspired by our ancestral wisdom. Because our role here is also to learn from the past, to be able also to feed into the present. And of course, it's also good to mention that even when we do so also, we first of all have the elders take the lead, but also to see that the law also synergizes also what the government is also doing, because we're also not doing something that is also against what the government is doing. We're also wanting to tell the government that we can also synergize and we can bring value even to the modern law and that kind of thing. So there are times we also use the local legal person also to look at it and to see the areas of synergy and all that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. Elias, what's your perspective? So Simon is coming from looking at documentation from using the African cosmology and its importance in capturing that using different methodologies. And this is what is being brought as well in the program. From your experience, ACHM has been doing lots of documentation, which includes biological monitoring and packaging this. Do you want to say more about the importance of documentation and what this is being, how this is being brought to feed into this joint learning program?
Okay, Gertrude. Maybe before I even talk about documentation, I would also add to the benefits which were asked later on. What we have realized that women benefit because they've been taking the manure to the croplands. Now, instead of them taking the manure, the animals are crowed in the cropland, so that labor has been reduced. And also, there are elderly people, maybe women that have maybe widows, and they don't have someone to head the cattle. So if the community is a community head, then the head has now take care of the animals on behalf of the widow. So that's one benefit which they have also encountered. And also the other problem which the communities have avoided was if the animals are moving in one head, there are no more animals that stray in other people's cropland. So there are no more cases at the village heads or house. So that's one area. Then on documentation, for us, what we document is on the land itself, we are saying is the land really being restored. So we are looking at the annual grasses, perennial grasses, are they increasing? Biodiversity, is there more life on the land? Both special wildlife, is it coming in? And on the water part is, we also check the water table in the boreholes to check, is the water table rising? So that's one area which we document. The other area where we document also is the rivers. If the rivers have been dry for quite a number of time, how long is the water lasting in the rivers? Or how long does it flow? So the river flow also, that's one area where we are documenting. So then also, of course, the community itself, are they working as a team? So that is those areas that we are documenting.
Mm-hmm. And we are just 2 minutes before we close this session. So maybe we can hear last words from Solomon, 30 seconds, and then I can also give last words to Paul before we round out the session. Solomon, any last thoughts?
Okay, thank you so much. So my last thoughts, I would like to encourage each and everyone here present to support the project or the program, because our vision is to see an environmental health society, a society that is empowered and that can sustain itself. So this program is an opportunity and is the power to make us go as a community in Zimbabwe and Chimaniman. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Gertrude.
you, Solomon. Yes, Paul.
Sure.
Last words.
As a traditional leader, I would like to see more and more infusion of traditional knowledge infused or exogenous knowledge fused into traditional knowledge, so that the two become powerful tools for development. Yes, we need modern knowledge from people like Elias on land regeneration, but they also need to understand our traditional knowledge base. And when you infuse the two, we get better ideas and we develop better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much to my colleagues who have joined this session to share their experiences on the ground. And thank you so much to Taurayi and Melody, farmers from the ground who struggled with connection but stuck with it, and we have been hearing their voices on the ground. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our viewers and listeners who have been participating in this process, and we appreciate all the comments, your thoughts as you were feeding into the conversation where we were talking about how we are working with livestock and traditional ecological knowledge to regenerate landscapes and build resilient communities in Zimbabwe and Kenya. We are pleased that you managed to join us in the conversation. Should you want to hear more about the work that you are doing, do not hesitate to contact my colleagues who have also put their contact details in the chat box. We appreciate your time and thank you for helping us keep this place sacred. We thank you.
Thank you and bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.